I think most of us, we think of the Underground Railroad as Harriet Tubman, its exciting stories, which they are, great exciting stories, but we don't think of it in terms of, was this something that had a major impact on American history? And I argue that it does, because it affected how Northerners thought of themselves, how Southerners thought of themselves, and was actually a key reason, one of the key reasons for the coming of the Civil War. The hardest part, I hear this all the time from people who write stuff, whether they're fiction or nonfiction or historians or in literature, is just starting, just the beginning of it. But for me, generally what eases that is trying to tell a story. I think good historians tell a story. And I found sometimes the easiest way for me to do that, and in this book that I edited with Gabor Borit, Slavery, Resistance, Freedom, when I'm writing the introduction, I begin with part of it is a story about my son and I going up on one of the observation towers in the Gettysburg battlefields. So generally, if I begin with a story, and especially a story from personal experience, for some reason, it just helps facilitate the process of then moving into the more analytical parts of whatever it is I'm writing. The first research project that I did that came out of my dissertation as a manuscript is on African Americans using the court system in Massachusetts from 1630 up to about 1850. So it's a long time window, but geographically it's a fairly narrow area. And it connects to different conceptual themes about, so what does it mean when a subordinate group in a society uses the law and uses the court system and isn't an effective means of resistance and this sort of thing. When I came here, so that the colonial period is where I begin. It moves into what historians would call the early republic, early 19th century, 18 teens, 1820s. Well, it's the first year walk they started doing. Actually, a student was the one who came up with this idea, because I used to do it 100 years ago or something like that, where the students would walk from the college to the National Cemetery where Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address during the first week of school. And then at some point, I don't know when, they stopped carrying out that tradition. And so there was a student, I don't remember her name, who a few years ago suggested that Gettysburg College do this again. And then they asked somebody to read the Gettysburg Address. Alan Gelzo did it, I think 2 years ago, and I'm not sure who else has done it. So they asked me to do it this year, and they tell us if we want, we can say a little bit before or after reading it. So my choice was actually framed it in a sermon that Martin Luther King gave in 1961 in his church in Alabama about being dead at 39. It was kind of his theme, that if you don't do anything to improve society, you're essentially dead. And so my exhortation to the freshmen was, that when we hit the 100th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech, which was given 100 years from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, that hopefully we'll be closer to Martin Luther King's dream, and much of which I think you could say started with the Gettysburg Address and kind of Lincoln's vision for the country and what the country could become. I enjoyed the relationships he developed with students, and I think more than anything else, I like the intellectual challenge of trying to get people to think about things in different ways, and not necessarily to convince them that any particular perspective is the right perspective, although there are some things that I think are the right perspective, but at least trying to get them to think with greater sophistication, more levels of complexity, and to try and understand things from different points of view. And I enjoy that.